We have the minorest of news today, as well as what's turned into a yearly tradition on this podcast. We're going to do a mock draft. I'm going to keep it quick, tight, outside the Guardians pick. I will get through all 30 today. It'll be a fun time. This is, luckily for us, an evergreen episode. For those of you who are like, oh, draft schmaff, we'll have some fun. Join in. We'll talk about some news at the front. It is going to be a fun solo edition of Locked On Guardians.
Tanner Bagger, the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show today. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Hello, everyone. I'm Jeff Ellis. I'm one of the first hosts they brought into this network to talk about baseball. I'm a middle school teacher in Wisconsin by day, special ed, focus on behavior. And then by night, I did this podcast. And before that, I used to write nationally at Scouting 24/7 on prospects and the draft, which is, listen, I was born in Cleveland. Well, actually, I was born in Akron. Let's be honest. I was born in Akron, but I grew up in Northeastern Ohio, a Cleveland sports fan. I was born in the early 80s. And most of my life, for most of these sports teams, the draft is maybe the most exciting day of the year. That's how it worked for me. You know, it was always like, hey, the hope springs eternal. It's the reason I always said that I love prospects and why I wrote on them. It's a lotto ticket that hasn't, you can still sit there and hope it's going to turn into gold, right? You're hoping it's a Jose Ramirez and not a Matt Laporta. You're hoping for those situations. Now that we have more data and things like that, which help us know more than ever, what players have better chances of success, specifically in the draft. But I think it's just, being in my mid 40s, growing up in Northeast Ohio, I love prospects. I love the draft. And, I hope you love it too. If not, let's just talk about some of the things that have happened around baseball and how those kind of come around back to Cleveland before we get into segment 2 and 3 and knock out 27 picks. Because the first round is 27 picks this year because the Yankees, the Mets, and the Dodgers all dropped 10 spots because they went over the competitive balance luxury tax. So we're going to do 27 picks. I know in the past we went deeper, but Cleveland has a comp B pick this year. For those who are not familiar, every other year it goes back and forth. So a comp A, then a comp B. And then those comp picks are now based in order of how you finished in the regular season. So Cleveland has the highest comp B pick, which happens after the second round. So it'll go first round compensation picks for free agents. Then comes the PPI, the prospect player incentive, which the Royals get because Bobby Witt was a top 3 MVP finish. I think that's the only one this year. I could be wrong. Then you'll have the comp A picks, then the second round, then your comp B picks, then the compensation picks for a team like Atlanta for Max Fried. Then you got the third round, then you got the fourth round, and then you've got your comp picks for like the Yankees for Soto and that at the end of the fourth round. So it's a lot going on with the draft. I love the baseball draft and its complications. Maybe if I was not as deep into it, it wouldn't be as fun. But let's get into the news around baseball. I know a lot of people wanted Jeffrey Springs. That came up a lot in our comments. He was traded to Oakland. There's part of me that thinks Oakland is trading for Jeffrey Springs and signing Luis Servino so they can make their payroll look at a high enough point that they won't get in trouble, but then putting insurance on all of these guys because they're not going to play. I mean, they added the 2 most injury prone starters. It's like, are you betting on insurance to pay for them so you can just make it appear like these guys are going to be on your roster and you've artificially inflated payroll? Like, is this the point here? I know it's not, but like with the way Oakland operates, anything's on the table. The thing I'll say of Springs, he's got 1 year over 100 innings. The transition to starter looked good, but 1 year at 135 innings, got shut down late last year. Cost that comp A pick. That's what the Rays got. And then some kind of moving parts. I don't know if anything like superior or great. And I do like Joe Boyle quite a bit. And like Tampa's had a lot of luck with those guys. I've been a Joe Boyle guy since high school, and I was a Joe Boyle guy in Notre Dame. So I do like Boyle quite a bit. And Tampa could make this a home run if they can help him more than Oakland could. And let's be honest, Oakland got him from Cincy. Cincy does a pretty good job with development as well. So it's not like you can just be like, hey, Oakland's not good at development, because they're not. I can understand why people wanted him. I just think he's too big of a risk. Let's go through the other things we really haven't discussed on the show. Today, the Orioles signed Tomoyuki Sagano. I know some people were intrigued. We got some questions on him because he's had a super low ERA in Japan, but he's an undersized righty. And everyone likes to bring up the fact that, yeah, he's got a low K rate, but the Japanese league has higher contact rates. Yeah, but he has a low K rate for the Japanese league. Like, it'd be one thing if he was like league average, but he's not missing bats comparatively in that league. And the Orioles gave him $13 million, which I would rather give him $13 million than give Blake Snell 15. I'll say that. If you're going to do a 1-year deal, at least I would go with the rubber armed guy as the guy who, threw less than 20 innings last year. But it's, I don't know. I think there's some concerns there when a guy does not miss bats. I know he doesn't walk anyone. Kind of an interesting one. I know that he was brought up. I also want to mention Jake Berger to the Rangers. I only want to bring this up because if the Rangers don't trade Nathan Lowe, I would love, and this should be no surprise, for the Guardians to contact Texas about Josh Smith, who could play some outfield, could play some second base, could play all over for them, could be that hybrid role that they could use right now. Baseball Reference is not the best thing in the world, but they have Josh Smith listed as a bench player. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I think it's kind of interesting that that's where he is. So I wanted to mention that. The Guardians added Dom Nunez, brought him back, I should say. He was a AAA catcher a year ago. He's probably getting the high end of AAA pay because I think they value what he can do back there. I think they like having a vet with the major league experience who can do a lot of things and help them develop pitching. Justin talked a lot about how they need to add catching to the minors in the offseason, and, well, they're bringing back Nunez. I think that speaks volumes about what he did and the work he did with young players. So I think that is a good, it's the minorest thing, but it's one of those things where when I look at it, it's like, clearly he is doing, some kind of work they like with all of their young players. And yeah, I just think that, it's one of those things. It's not the big move, but it brings value. And then one last one, MLB.com, Brian Murphy reported that Cleveland, I didn't read the full report, could be interested in Walker Buehler because they signed hurt arms, seemed to be the long and short of the take that I saw. Listen, if teams back off Walker Buehler, I wouldn't be shocked if Cleveland made a run. I had him is the person they were going to draft over, I believe Brady Aiken was that draft class. I think that was who I had them going with because they liked everything about him at the time. I heard positive things, and they went for the guy with the higher ceiling, and it didn't work out. So I thought that was kind of interesting that, Walker Buehler got mentioned. Now, also point out, people are just kind of throwing stuff at a wall and seeing if it sticks. Heyman talked about Cleveland with Chaminade and Teoscar Gonzalez. I just don't see that either. So yeah, I mean, I wasn't even familiar with Brian Murphy, who put together a list of, ideal. It was basically he put together a list of ideal fits and mentioned Cleveland. So people are probably going to run with it. I'm just saying I literally had no connections. So I think I just wanted to point that out. So the big takeaway is pitching still going fast and furious on the market. There are some interesting trade targets. If this team wants to sit down and make some moves, they're adding depth because you need catching depth in the minors. That was an area of need, and you need someone with some of these young players, right? Like, we're hoping to see Austin Peterson and Parker Messick debut this year. We're hoping to see, some of the other players. It'd be nice to see Kennedy, Michael Kennedy, really push up to AAA this year. He should start the year in AA. It'd be nice to see Josh Hartle, who should get to AA this year. It's like you want to have solid, reliable catching in the upper minors, and that is why Dom Nunez, well, probably the least flashy signing you're going to see the Guardians make is one that has importance and value. Speaking of importance and value, we're going to come back and do the mock. So if you are here for the mock, it's coming all on today's Locked On Guardians. I'm stealing Justin's favorite sponsor here, Game Time. Justin uses Game Time for everything. This is his place to go. And when I have used Game Time, the thing I really like about it is the all-in pricing. Justin brings it up. I'm going to bring it up as well Because what is more annoying to me, like, oh, this is a good deal. I'm going to get this ticket, and you go to pay for it, and all of a sudden it like more than doubles in price. Like, what is going on here? Why is this one ticket all of a sudden more than twice what it's listed? You don't have that anymore with Game Time. They're going to be upfront and honest. You're going to see what it is with all the fees, service charges, all of that. It is in one place. It is like I said, is their upfront pricing. You can also look at the map of all events to make sure that you didn't get a terrible seat blocked by something. They are just trying their best to corner this market by giving you great features, great customer service, and just great product in general. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code Locked On MLB for. Oh, I forgot this part. So download that Game Time app, create an account, use the code Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem codes LOCKEDON MLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Let's do this mock. I have my way too early mock. My first one was November 7th. My second one, December 12th. I got 28 picks in it. I'm only going to go 27 on the show because, again, I don't want this to go forever. I don't want to get in trouble for a long show. And it is a little niche, let's be honest. But if you are someone who wants your content early, here it comes. Washington Nationals are on the clock. I will say before I dive in, the one thing that is consistent as I've kind of gone around and looked. I was curious to see, after I put mine together, like what Joe Doyle had, what Prospects Live had, what MLB, what Carlos Collazo had. A lot of people that I have gotten to know through the years and talk with or even worked for at various points. And the one consensus is no one knows anything. I will say, listen, a year ago, I allowed myself to be talked off of Bazana, but if you go back to the draft, I talked about how he felt like a guy who was a ideal fit for Cleveland. They took him. I think Ethan Holiday is that guy for Washington. Washington has typically gone for bigger names. They have gone for prep. They gone for some ceiling. I know last year they went, why am I blanking on the bat kid from Wake Forest, the third baseman / center fielder, but had great batted ball metrics and was a little bit of a surprise pick at that point in time, but they always big hitters, strong hitters, Brady House, Elijah. I'm going to pull up their list because I'm just having brain cramps all the time. But I want to say not Elijah Campbell, but they go for big tools and they like big power. Elijah Green, son of Eric Green, the tight end. And I was blanking on Seaver King a year ago. They also took Caleb Lomavita, who was a college guy. So that is, 3 college guys in a row. But before that was, Elijah Green and Brady House. I think it's Ethan Holiday. It's bloodlines, it's high level performance, it's up the middle. He is the guy here, the sleeper, since I always do sleeper, Jace LaViolette. Though I'll get into the concerns with him. But I think if they decide to go with a college performer, that's the guy who stands out. They've been more of a bat over pitcher. But I also want to point out the Washington Nationals have now won the lottery 2 years in a row, because if you forgot, they won it in 2023 as well for the 2024 draft. But because of the way that the PPI works, or not PPI, the competitive, the rules, the new draft rules, I should say, I'm just throwing draft terms in there. They can only pick in the top 6 every other year. So they won, and then they did a redrawing and Cleveland won. So actually Washington has won 2 years in a row. And yeah, this is the team that last time they had top overall picks, got Strasburg and got Harper. But I think Holiday here makes a ton of sense. Angels, number 2. Now, the Angels have gone last year, not so much with Christian Moore, but before that, they liked their small school with Nolan Chanel, with Zach Neto, with a lot of those players. And one can make a case the top pitcher in this class is Tyler Bremner, the right-hand pitcher from UC Santa Barbara. Not necessarily a small school, one that's actually had a ton of first rounders, and that's Shane Bieber. That's where he came from. Michael McGreevy, I think, was their last first rounder, but they had 3 kids a year ago that were all fun and interesting. And Bremner it's him or Jamie Arnold, depending on how you want to look at it. But if the Angels want to go small school and want to go for some ceiling, their profile is typically, it makes sense with Bremner. Again, LaViolette is the sleeper for me with this selection because he could be quick moving. There's some positives. There's also some negatives. The Mariners, what are the Mariners like when they have a high pick? It's pitching. That's what they've done. They've been great at developing pitching. It's not a great. This is struggling with my words here. Last year at this time we're talking Bazana, we're talking Kurtz, we're talking Weatherholt. There's La Violette, and then Avia Arquette. It's just Cam Canarilla. It's not as good of a group. So yeah, they could go prep. They have gone prep, but when they've had a high pick, it's been traditionally more of a college guy. Jamie Arnold to me is my number one player in this class. The Florida State left-hander is a really good player, really good prospect. Brebner is the sleeper. If he's still on the board, I think he can make a lot of sense. Rockies like to go for power. I know they took Condon a year ago, who's a power outfielder. They also like power arms, but there really isn't one here that I feel like college-wise. And yeah, they have gone prep at points, but they've been more of a college team. So I got J.S. La Violette here. The one thing I'll say with him is traditionally when you're looking at college players, you want a K rate under 20%. Almost no one has managed to find consistent success whose final year had a K rate over 20%. It's just kind of one of those stats that you want to find that it's a line in the sand that when you see players struggle with, contact and things like that. So La Violette in college is at right here. I have it 26.7 and 23.8. If he drops it again by a similar amount, he didn't quite drop it 3. He needs to drop it a little bit more. And if you're like, well, you're being too, you're sticking to this and it's ridiculous. I get that. But I also get the fact that you also have to understand that this has been a separator. This is just one of those things. If you're above 20%, it doesn't work. It has not worked traditionally. There's not a lot of players who it has. So if he can get that down, if he can show he can get below that point, kind of alleviate some concerns, then he could go even higher. Let's be honest. There is definitely some, I think, 4-tool potential with some of the contact stuff there. It's, he is to me, I worry he's a passive hitter, and that's the other thing. And I don't know, I don't like guys who are huge at 6'6". I didn't want to make this the J.S. Violette haters club. I think he's an interesting prospect, but sometimes those longer lovers make it when you're that big. Higher strikeout rates, harder to make contact. There's a lot of good things there. I mean, he's still going to be top 10 on my board, so don't worry about the hate. Xavier Nevins, big, powerful kid, had a great summer. To me, the top prep hitter in this class. I have, in consideration here as their sleeper. St. Louis, after taking J.J. Weatherholt, but we're looking at a new front office. And what did this front office, what did Bloom do when he was with Boston? It was prep up the middle talent. And it was often guys who were pretty sound hitters, pretty sound overall. When you're looking at Mikey Romero, Nick York, and Marcello Mayer, who's the guy who kind of fits that in that class to me? It's Eli Willits, whose dad Reggie played forever, whose older brother is at Oklahoma right now. His dad's a coach, I believe, at Oklahoma. I could be getting it wrong. Could be Oklahoma State, and I'm making a big boo-boo. Reclassifier, one of the youngest players in this class, but he fits that Bloom approach. If Bloom wanted to go for an upside pitcher, Seth Hernandez is, I think he would have been the number one pitcher in last year's prep class. He's a really interesting player. Moving to Pittsburgh, Seth Hernandez, one of the 3 players from Corona High School in this class. Corona High School. Billy Carlson is one of them. Almost like it's a Carlson. No, Corona in California. He's just a really, multiple pitches, commands them well. I don't think he's the biggest guy, but I'm not getting focused on his size. It's one of those things too. When I look at players, it's like I just look at the pitch mix. I look at him throw, and I think that he has the ability to be a front of the rotation type. I think he is, probably the highest ceiling guy. Like I really like the Arnold and Bremner. I like them a lot, but I think Hernandez is the guy who has the ceiling. Could he finally be the right-handed pitcher who goes? I was pulling 6'4". I'm wrong, so he is big. But I don't know, he's got good command. He's got all those pitches. He throws hard. Could he finally be the prep right-hander who goes number 1 overall? I don't know, because I think Ethan Holiday is there and he's really good. Pittsburgh has recently gone with a lot of ceiling guys. Xavier Nevins is just sitting there. He was very tempted to put him there, but Pittsburgh's actually done really well with pitcher development. So I think taking the pitcher makes a ton of sense at 6 overall. Miami, the team that maybe got burned the worst on draft lotto night. You're going for ceiling. You're going for a deep rebuild. talked about Xavier Nayens multiple times. Big, strong kid, hits the ball really hard, had a fantastic summer. I think he makes a ton of sense right here just because, to me, he's from Washington. It's one of those areas we're seeing a lot more players come out of. He might end up a first baseman long term, but I believe in the power. I think he's got some of the best power from the high school ranks. Billy Carlson is a two-way guy who throws the ball really hard, but he also can play shortstop, and I think he's an interesting sleeper at 7. Toronto also had the good luck to move up into this year's draft to a little bit of a higher selection. Now, Toronto is interesting because typically they just take who slides. We do know they do like bloodlines historically there in the past, but they've often taken Arjun Nimala, for instance, I think about as a guy who slid to them, who was valued a lot higher last year. They took, why am I blanking on the kid who punctured his lung from the same place, Gavin, ECU? I'm blanking on him, even though I had him as a top 10 talent. It's amazing, like things I can remember and the things I can't remember, but he slid to them and they jumped on him. So it's often who is the top sliding talent. Trey Yasevich. Man, how would I forget that? And I don't know if there's someone I would necessarily say is a sliding talent here. There will be on draft night. There always is. There's always surprises and things that change. So for Toronto, going through all of this, I put, Avi Arqueta. He is a college player transferring into Oregon State, had a good summer, showed up well, in the summer play. A lot of people are very high on him, top 10 upside, can play shortstop. It looks to be, the next great Oregon State hitter. It's a safer pick, but Toronto's front office maybe is going to lean towards safety when I don't think their leash is very long there. Cam Leiter, if you want bloodlines, it's a Leiter. Feels a little rich for him, but I just, bloodlines Toronto. Cincinnati has gone for ceiling a little bit. They're another team that will surprise you at points. When you look at, some of their recent picks last year, they surprised everyone, I think, when they took Chase Burns. And then after the year that Condon had, I don't think anyone was really too upset with them. Maybe you could argue they could have gone with Nick Kurtz or someone like that who really exploded, but they've been mostly, since outside of Cam Collier and Sal Stewart, like the last 3 picks have all been college performers. Now that I've said that, who do I have there? But quick, twitchy shortstop. That's right. I am going for athleticism, not going to the college ranks because, of course, why would I follow that up? Billy Carlson being another quick twitch guy, and why there's just the college ranks are a little too safe at this point. I don't know. It depends on your view on Devin Taylor, or Ethan Conrad, or Cam Kennarella, Brandon Summerhill. Like these are all guys that I've seen anywhere from 10 to 40. It's a long list of players that are kind of similarly rated to me at this point in the draft. And I just thought they might go for some ceiling here. Shortstops tend to rise. He is an interesting up the middle talent. Something about him just screams Cincinnati to me. I could be wrong, but that's why we have fun with it. And I don't plan to get many of these right. Though I will say, again, in my defense, if you go back to my way too early mock from my first mock that I when I actually had time to write a year ago, I got 3 of the teams right with the player. Now, I didn't get the picks. Like I had Kurtz going to Oakland, but I had Oakland at 1 overall at the time because it was when the season ended. But, using what they do in traditional history has been better for me than listening to the inside sources that love to tell me things in smoke screens. So we're going to come back. We're going to power through the rest of this list, try to tighten it up. I've already talked about some of these players. So if I get someone I've already talked about in terms of name, I'm going to move quick. But, thank you for joining us on this mock draft edition of Locked On Guardians. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. I advised you last time. Right now it's the time to bet against the Blue Jackets as they had another loss yesterday. Earlier in the season, I was saying go for them. Now it seems to be going the other way for that team. But right now, new customers, you can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. Can you bet the over on number of interceptions a Browns quarterback will throw? If so, do that. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place your live bets all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I want to thank SelectQuote for returning to us as a sponsor. The World Series, Super Bowl, the Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing, teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. SelectQuote licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's hands. And what I love about SelectQuote is, one, this is not a company that came out of nowhere. They've been around since 1985 with nearly 40 years of experience helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage. They've done enough to buy multiple Major League Baseball teams. And it's not one size fits all. It's not like, hey, you signed up, you're this age, this is the insurance we're giving you. It is, you sit down, you talk with their licensed insurance agents to work for you to tailor the life insurance policy for your needs in as little as 15 minutes. So get the right insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedon. Go to selectquote.com/lockedon today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedon. And we are back. So just talking about how the Reds sometimes like to go for ceiling, up the middle talent. Kyson Cunningham is a very twitchy. He is undersized. If you're going to have a kind of a thing for not believing in him, but he runs. He is a fantastic athlete, though he is the type of guy, if I'm being honest, Billy Carlson might be a little foolish. I didn't put him higher just because size tends to win out. But let's move on instead to Chicago. And this one, I changed it from my last one. I don't love it. I had Devin Taylor before. That's who the sleeper is. Devin Taylor. They like local-ish kids. Devin Taylor's at Indiana. He had a great cape. We know they put a lot of value in the cape the last 2 years. Devin Taylor, I probably should have kept. But, Cam Cannarella of Clemson he's again probably like a four-tool guy, but he's a safe, strong hitter, runs well, does everything right. Not the, what peak Benintendi was. Maybe that's not what people want to hear. Not what he has become now, but like stuff like that, where he can do a lot of things. I really like. He's probably better. Maybe he's like what we thought Benintendi could be. That might be the better way to put it. But I think when you're looking at the player in general, he could go a lot higher. I remember, I know there's points where Justin has talked about him as a potential top 5 guy in his book, and he's been a high level performer for a lot of years. So I have him over Taylor, but I feel like this group of college outfielders, you can just, pull a name out of a hat, and it depends on your point of view. Speaking of that, the A's at 11, Brandon Summerhill, outfielder, Arizona. He got hurt in the Cape. We didn't get to see a lot from him. People love the hit tool. There are concerns that Arizona, I've talked about how I don't love that hitter's environment because it's a little bit too easy. And he didn't hit for that much power, even though he was in a very good hitter's environment. But there are, I know MLB.com, I believe has him as a top 10 talent, and other places have him as a, second rounder. I'm closer to the second rounder. And Sacramento/Oakland, I never agree. So Summerhill, if they want to go stats, and a guy who I think is going to jump, Ethan Conrad, who I have going next. He's the sleeper. Texas, I have Ethan Conrad from Wake. I think he's a guy who's going to bust out this year. I think he is kind of in a similar situation to, oh my goodness, my brain is just mush. I'm blanking on the Nationals player again. I went and looked it up and I've lost it already. Seaver King. He's kind of their Seaver King this year. Maybe not quite as athletic, but definitely more power. Transfer in sleeper Cam Leiter. They do like pitchers there. San Francisco tends to go for performers. Mentioned Devin Taylor, the Indiana kid. He was awesome last year. He was awesome in the Cape. I feel like we're sleeping on him a little too much. I am higher on him than the field. Merrick Houston, the shortstop, and I believe also out of Wake. I could be wrong in that, but he had another player who performed well in the Cape, and we know how many teams value that anymore. And there's not a lot of great college shortstops. So Merrick Houston is the sleeper. Tampa going for ceiling, adding some pieces. Billy Carlson here. I think most people consider him a shortstop. I want to pull up his velocity though, because I mentioned before, like this kid can shove it. Part of that Corona grouping with Billy Ebner, I want to say. But yeah, let's see if I can pull up his full velocity here. He's mid 90s. He's got a heck of an arm. He runs well. He's got some secondary offerings. He's shown some ability to hit. He's probably the best two-way prospect in this class in terms of I could see a team deciding to have him go either position. But speaking of two-way guys, sleeper, Cruz, Schoolcraft, I think, most people want his left-handed pitcher, but dude's huge. I think he could hit well at first base, but I think Carlson is probably shortstop, then a pitcher, Schoolcraft pitcher, then a first baseman. Boston just traded away Kyle Teal. Luke Stevenson is sitting there, who could go a lot higher. The catcher out of North Carolina, draft eligible sophomore, probably the top college catcher in this class. I think, hey, it does not hurt to replace when you're picking around the same pay range. Now, he's not as strong as Kyle Teal as a prospect, but another solid catching prospect. I got Merrick Houston as the sleeper. Minnesota Twins at 16. Merrick Houston off the board here. Why? Twins and Guardians tend to have a similar approach. We know they value the Cape. They've done a lot of similar drafting. I think Houston is a no doubt shortstop who, has shown that contact ability, has performed well in the summer leagues. And, he's getting great coaching when you are a player at Wake. Chicago Cubs, Ike Irish. They've gone mostly college guys. Ike Irish at Auburn has played really well. Had a good summer to show off. Dean Curley from Tennessee is the sleeper there. Kind of a player to watch. One of those guys who could really elevate himself this year. A lot of guys coming to Tennessee and performed very well as transfers. Billy Amick a year ago. Multiple players before that. But Ike Irish, I think, is solidly in that top 20. Speaking of Tennessee guys, Arizona has typically gone for a little more ceiling, but they've also gone of late with guys who can maybe help them quicker. Or no, I'm sorry. This is ceiling. I got this confused. Wrong Gavin. I have Gavin Fine, the hard-hitting third baseman prep player going to Arizona. With Quentin Young, related to the Young family, Dimitri and Delman, is the sleeper here. Gavin Fine, I think, is just a really good bat. We talked about the closest guy to Xavier Nayans to me in this class amongst the prep hitters. It's not a lot of prep guys, not a lot of college arms. That's where the prep class is kind of hitting wise a little bit like a year ago, where it's a bit top heavy, and then the prep pitching is better, but you're kind of seeing right now. But Arizona, tends to go for ceiling. Confused myself there. 19 Baltimore. I got Henry Ford, the outfielder from UVA. They like power. I think a sleeper pick here could be Ethan Petrie, the first baseman. I want to say South Carolina, and I feel like I'm going to get myself in trouble when I get it wrong. No, it's South Carolina, who is a very divisive figure in terms of rating and performance. Ethan Petrie, we'll talk about him more later on. But Baltimore goes for power, hence why I think Henry Ford, who had another draft eligible sophomore, I want to say, had some of the best raw power in his prep class and in college baseball. Makes a lot of sense to Baltimore at this point. Milwaukee, sleeper is Brock Sell. He reminds me a little bit of Payne, who they drafted a year ago in the first round. But I have Nick Dumsnell here, Cal Baptist. Unusual to have Cal Baptist in the first round. Good Cape, great statistical numbers. One of those guys who, like, some places have him in the top 10, other people have him more in the second round. Could be a 5-tool guy. Until last year, we have seen the Brewers go with a lot more college players. Now it is, that front office kind of getting to exert themselves. But I think Dumasel is kind of in this range. It makes some sense here. Houston has gone a little more with college performers and safety. So I've got Gavin Killen, the shortstop from Tennessee, another player I think has a good chance to, stick up the middle. Let's say he might be more second base than shortstop. Not the biggest kid, but just a solid performer. Good numbers. He's probably going to be in the first round because he's an up the middle kid who does a little bit of everything. I don't know if I want to say again. I should probably watch my words. It's like he's one of those guys who's like 5s or 4s at everything. Like when I say he does everything, I don't want someone to say, "Oh, that means 5-tool." I just mean he can. He's not a nothing for power. It may be not, anything better than average, but he's one of those players that could rise with a big year because you're feeling pretty good about him up the middle. He's played well throughout his career. And I have Ethan Petrie as a sleeper here because Houston also can go for power. Atlanta, pitching. That is what they do. Kyson Witherspoon, the right-handed pitcher from Oklahoma, is a... You know what? I did not update this, so I apologize. Actually, I do not have Kyson Witherspoon. Who I have here is Cruz Schoolcraft. I had 2 names in my little Google Doc, not Google Doc, in my Google Sheets cell. So Cruz Schoolcraft here, a player that, gosh, I want to pull up, I think MLB has in the top 10. So I am not, agreeing with them. 6'8". He isn't going to turn 18 until mid April. Actually, he's got the same birthday as my mom. Fun random fact, but big kid, lefty, throws well, hits for power. I mentioned him earlier in the draft. There's just a lot of raw ability with him. So you're kind of looking at that. And if you're like, oh, how could this guy fall? Again, think about who they got a year ago. Think when Caminiti fell to them and they jumped. And then Cameron Appenzeller is, maybe should have Kyson Witherspoon here as their sleeper, but I'll keep Cameron Appenzeller, who, is in kind of this range. Like the prep arms are, like, in a way, the strength of this class, which is interesting because in a way they were last year as well. Kansas City, Jack Caglione was a gamble. Cags was a gamble because of the chase rate. Like, there's so many elite things about him in terms of contact and power, but the chase rate is a big concern. And, like most of the kids in the draft, he struggled when he was drafted. But he looked good in the Cape, and hopefully they'll turn around for Kansas City. Blake Mitchell, nothing's riskier than a prep catcher, even more than a prep arm. So why not gamble on Sean Gamble, who I believe is down at IMG, who is an outfielder and I think a two-way guy. He might also be like a right-handed pitcher and is just toolsy, like tooled up for days. That type of gamble late in the first round on Gamble. Come on, it's fun to put it together. If they decide to go pitching, Kyson Witherspoon, the athletic kid from Oklahoma, right-handed pitcher. I got Witherspoon and Appenzeller about the same grade. So you could put either here at this point in, however you want to view this mock, but I went with Witherspoon because I think he's a little bit of a better athlete, though Appenzeller is a little bit bigger. For Detroit, I really debated which way I wanted to go with this. Like, a lot of people really like Trey Phelps, and I felt like he is probably too far down the line. They've kind of liked the polished prep kids. So I went with Brady Ebel, whose dad, Dino, is the third base coach for the Dodgers. He's the last of that Corona high school grouping. I know it's another shortstop, and they took, did they take Bryce Renier a year ago? Yes, they took Bryce Renier, right, a year ago, the two-way California kid, but some similar things with Ebel to him, I feel like. And then if you go back the year before it, man, I wrote up their second rounder. This is the problem with doing this long, is like all the names start to blend. The second baseman with the good hit tools, Kevin McGonigal, that was it. I was going to say, yeah, Pennsylvania. I could remember like Pennsylvania, second baseman, good hit tool. Couldn't remember McGonigal's name, but he kind of fits that same approach. And this seems to be an approach. Now, interestingly enough, Detroit, when they took Renier, it's only like the 5th first-round shortstop they've taken in the history of that franchise. It's very weird. But we do see a changing of how things are done there. And Ebel feels like their type of guy. Sleeper, Kyson Witherspoon, if they want to go pitching. Again, I value athletic traits more over size. So that's why I have him a little bit higher. San Diego, ceiling, Quentin Young. Now, I know he's related to the other Youngs. I should probably pull up and say exactly what the relation is. But, as a kid, nephew of Dimitri and Delman. So, 6'5", massive kid, lots of projection, elite power. Sounds like a Padres type of pick, right? Because either you keep him and maybe turns into something special, or he's a great trade asset in a few years. Dean Moss is another athletic outfielder who's about in this range. So if not Quentin Young, Dean Moss would stand out. Philadelphia, Cameron Appenzeller I have here with Henry Godbout is a second baseman if they decide to go to the college ranks. Godbout just seems to barrel everything. UVA kid. Could be on the Guardians, radar. If you want high contact, barreling, good approach, it's Godbout. But why Appenzeller? Because I like big pitchers. Appenzeller, I want to say, is 6'6". I want to say he's at the larger size of things. He's 6'6". He's another young kid. Another Illinois. That isn't a growing area. Yeah, Witherspoon's only 6'2". And he's at Oklahoma. I'm sorry. I think I was referring to him as a prep kid. He's not. It's that he transferred from a JUCO ranks. So he's 20. He'll be 20. My confusion was he was 19 on this year's draft. So JUCO ranks to Oklahoma. He's going to be draft eligible because he will turn 21 in August. So I apologize. Big mistake throughout there. Witherspoon is a college pitcher, especially in this situation, though. Appenzeller is more of a Philadelphia type as a big prep arm. Hey, they like toolsy guys, big time power, or large pitchers. Bonus if they have velocity. So that brings us to Cleveland. This is a Cleveland Guardians podcast, and I'm at 40 minutes, so I better get moving. The Cape. We talked about that so much last year. We talked about it in the years before that, how much the value of the Cape. DeLauder, Bazana, we can keep going. Hunter Gaddis was a strong Cape performer. Cape matters. The Cape MVP this year was Ethan Petrie. He is a player who, boy, does he have some debate about his true value. I've seen some people who say that he might go in the top 10 picks. I've seen some people who think he won't go in the first round. And he was awesome in the Cape. Just absolutely demolished the Cape. Great numbers. Now, again, his strikeout rates, not ideal. If they're over 25%, maybe this doesn't happen. There is some swing and miss to his game, but he has hit 44 home runs over 2 years. He is a big, strong, right-handed bat. And it's probably what a lot of fans want, even though honestly anymore, they don't quite need that. I think, someone asked on the notes, and I should remember, Caden Bodine also had a really good Cape. And you could never have enough catchers. And I want to pull up, I think he led the Cape in batting average. I could be wrong in that, but he is an interesting player at this point in the draft. I think Kyson Witherspoon also makes a ton of sense because it's about traits. It's not about performance and everything else. Not that he hasn't performed well, but it's kind of similar to Jerron Watts Brown, who I thought they would like a few years ago, but hopefully he'll take some positive steps. And yeah, with that, we end this mock at over 40 minutes. I just, again, with Cleveland, you're leaning into, I think more often than not, college performers. I could be wrong. We did have Ralphie recently and then all of the prep arms. But I think when you're looking at them, that Cape performance, guys like Nick Dumasel, Ethan Petrie, Caden Bodine, we know how much value they place in the Cape. We know how much they look at that. Now, if they're going for ceiling at this point in the draft, I do think, the Dean Moss, to a degree, Kyson Witherspoon from Oklahoma University, and a sleeper here, I think, is Slater DeBrun, who's kind of like the Slade Caldwell of this year's class, another undersized outfielder with great athletic traits, who is not going to turn 18 until June. So really young for the class, great athletic traits. It can do a bit of everything. So he might be the big sleeper. But thank you all for joining us. This extra long episode. We had some news. We had some draft picks. I made some big mistakes because I just got things confused. But, it's early in the scouting side of things for me this year. And with the Guardians having the pick they had, I just have not had the full time. But still, this is those. Probably should have said this at the beginning, not the end. It's about what teams do, not what I assume a team's going to do or what I think a team should do. It is what historically these teams or the people in charge have done when they're with other organizations. So thank you for joining me today on what turned at the end a little more scattershot than I would have liked. Thank you to all of our everydayers, including Chris Adams, who was in the comments saying these found us over the summer and enjoyed the show. Thank you all for your fantastic continued support. Numbers were great yesterday. I appreciate all of you, and I appreciate everyone who stuck around for the full time. Tell us what you want us to talk about in the comments below, and anything Christmassy. We're getting close to that season, but thank you all again, and go Guardians, go.